Hi everybody, it's me, the Fetch, host of Inside the Eye Live. Before the Sunday mainstream media political pundit talk shows, there's Inside the Eye Live, where we break down some of the weekly mainstream media talking points before the talking points even get aired. Add in some entertaining stories, weather, cats, intriguing and informative guests, and you get one of the most listened to Saturday morning streaming media political talk shows going today. And it's all right here on our flagship station, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. So join me, the Fetch, for Inside the Eye Live every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern. It is truly intelligent media for the politically aware.
Welcome to Sacred Matrix, a divine paradigm of love and universal consciousness, with your host, Janet Kira Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Together, we transform the world.
And now, here are your hosts, Janet Kira and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
We must have had daylight savings time shift because I thought I had another hour before the show was on. So bear with me. My husband's not here, so Ruth Ann and I are going to have a chat by ourselves. I'm going to pull up your bio, Ruth Ann, so just bear with me 1 second while I pull it up. When did we have daylight savings time change? My goodness. Okay.
Yesterday.
1 second. Yesterday. Okay. Well, I was sleeping on that one, huh? Well, I'm glad you can hear me good, too. Here we go. Ruth Ann. What am I calling you? Joey? I know you're Ruth Ann. Ruth Ann Friend. Okay. Hold on. I have a very good friend, Joanne, so sorry if I mixed up a name. Hold on.
Oh, no problem.
Ruth Ann Friend is from a small Midwestern town in southern Illinois, and she's lived in that community all of her life. She married and had 4 children, and now she has grandchildren. She's clairvoyant, like her mother, and also her son David, who is now crossed over to the other side. And David and Ruth shared their world together with the spirits and other universal beings, ETs, throughout their lives. Ruth Ann is also a Reiki master teacher, a practitioner, and she's taught it at the college level. She has presented at many workshops in the spirit world and Reiki. She performs hypnosis and does readings, and she's an author and has written 3 books. Let me adjust the sound a little bit here. Here we go, in case you can't hear me. Her first was Under the Rainbow Crossing. It talks about the house where she still lives that was built in the 1850s and has 7 different spirits in it. And her second book is the story of David, based on her son's abilities and their incarnations. Ruth and David's incarnations, they reincarnated to come back into this life. And her newest book was just released in February. For the UFO Congress. That was last year or this year?
This year.
This year. Okay. And it is called Aliens Within Our Own Selves. And I'll let you tell us a little bit about that book and your other books. But welcome to our show, Ruth Ann. And sorry, Dr. Lessin will be here soon. But what would you like to tell our listeners about yourself that I may have missed?
Well, I think you covered it pretty good, and I want to thank you so much for inviting me to come on your show tonight.
Well, we really appreciate having you here. I'm very curious about your relationship with David. Are you still in touch with him now that he's on the other side?
Yes, I've always been in touch with him, and when I do Reiki, I also know he comes in with his energy, so who I work on, he's also working on, and we're very connected, always have been. So that's a a blessing and a wonderful thing to be able to share our work together in this way.
There's another author I've interviewed that talks to her son who's deceased, and I forget his name right now. But do you get communications from him that's words, or is it just energetic?
No, I get words, and sometimes I see him as solid as you or anyone else. Sometimes he may just be in his light. We always knew spirits that came even by the color of their light around them. So, no, I do see him.
And so tell me a little bit more about, so you both together worked with the deceased in spiritual realms. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. We have my mother, she had that ability, but she did not talk about it. That was a long time ago, and people didn't want to mention it. And my grandfather, her father was that way, but I only knew he was. I never heard him talk about it. So I've always been that way. I don't know any other way to be, and that's the way my son came in. We live in these other realms and worlds, and I really don't know what normal is. We used to laugh and say, maybe we're the normal ones, you know.
Well, your story, it's very interesting. It's very similar to mine. I was raised in a 1840s Pennsylvania farmhouse, and it appeared to be a portal from this realm to the other realms. So there were all I didn't document how many different spirits were in there because it just seemed like there were all kinds. But so tell us about this house, which had the 7 different spirits in it. How did you first become aware that there were ghosts or beings in your home?
Well,
what was your first sighting or encounter?
Okay. It was the first book under the Rainbow Crossing. And we moved in this very old home. My husband always built homes, was a carpenter, so we had a lot of work to do. As we began to remodel, and I'm sure you've heard this before, my children were all little, so there was always a lot of noise in the house. I wouldn't have even noticed anything for quite a while. But as we remodeled, I know that like the fan would fly off of the counter when we were working in a kitchen, or things would shoot across the room or whatever. This went on, and I remember one of the most sweetest, tenderest moments during that time. Of a morning, sometimes I would be woken up by this little hand caressing my cheek. And I knew instinctively this was a little girl. So this is how everything started, that we began to know our family, our other family, and that's what they became, was another family.
So this little girl, so you weren't freaked out by her touching your cheek. You found it endearing.
Oh, yes. I've never been afraid of anything like that. I guess because it's so familiar to me, and my son was the same way. But eventually, I began to get more acquainted with him. I had a friend that's in the book. Her name was Bev, and she was also clairvoyant. I met her in a very strange way, like we always do when we're led to one another, and it's meant to be. And she came to the house and went through the house, and she was talking about the different ones that were there, and there were 7. And I name each of them in the book, and who they were, why they were there. And this little girl, Katie, as time went on, she would call me Mama, and she would call my son brother. So, of course, we knew exactly what that meant. That would have been times before. And then I began to see the visions of our lifetimes in that house.
Oh, so you were related to her in that house, and you came back to the house you lived in before. Oh, that's fascinating. Mm-hmm. So tell me more about that. That's very interesting. That whole family, were they all part of your family from the previous lifetime, or were there other generations there?
There were others there. There was one that we always called the cleaning lady. She folded everything. I think I sent you some pictures over that you may have gotten. I hope I have
Yeah,
pictures.
I have some pictures here.
Uh-huh.
There's some lights that they're going through.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, one was forming in the bathroom downstairs, and one when I was in the dining room, the doors were opening to another room. So I turned and took that picture. That was the one who kind of ran the household. She was kind of the main lady. And I believe I sent something else of another one that lived in the house. But the one was the overseer of the house, so that's two. And then we had one man, he loved to watch the remodeling. And he would do real funny things. We called him the garage man. And my husband, if he laid down, he was a carpenter, and if he laid down a tool or maybe a 2x4 or something, turn around to get it, it would be gone a lot of times. And one day up on the roof, I went up the ladder to take something to him, and he was just scratching his head like, where could that be? I said, what's wrong? And he said, I had a board I had just cut, and I just laid it down, and I turned around to get it, and it's gone. And I started laughing because I knew the garage man had did something. And I looked up into this huge shade tree in the front yard, and it was way up in across two limbs in the shade.
Oh my
tree.
goodness!
And then we had we had a young man there. We called him the lumberjack. He always wore this plaid shirt, and he was about early 30s. And my kids could see him. And I remember many nights they would cry out or something, and I would go in, and they would tell me they saw him standing at the window. Now, we didn't talk to the kids about any of this. They were small and growing up. But I knew that children, they have the gift to see things too, So I listened carefully, and I explained, that you're okay, and I'm here, and just let them think it was a dream. And then we had the one, Joseph. And he had been a runaway slave and brought in through the Underground Railroad. And he also lived there doing odd jobs, and that's where he had always been until he passed away. They had a little place.
Wow, that's very interesting because my house, same thing. I actually found the passageway. This is in Pittsburgh, and my house is on a hilltop overlooking the Ohio River. But there's another house in the way, and there's trains. But back originally, when it was built, there wasn't another house in front of it. And there in the basement, there's a tunnel. I've never gone into it because it was, crumbling. But we had a psychic come and said that was part of the Underground Railroad. And I had gone out of my body. I do astral projection as a child, and I went down into the basement, and I kind of maybe went through a time portal or something, but I saw a woman sitting on a bed and crying, and there had been a battle, and there was blood everywhere. And then and that was, I'm 63, so that was back in the 60s sometime. I was still probably under 10 years old when I saw that. So fast forward to the night that Princess Diana died. I was talking to a man on the AOL chat. They had an instant chat, and he said he was a psychic. And I said, okay, would you like to come and see my house because it's haunted? And I was staying in an apartment, but my sister had the keys to the house. We closed it down temporarily because my parents were in a home, and my sister hadn't decided to move into the house yet. So we went down to the house, and the psychic went immediately over to the stairwell where we would see all the ghosts disappear into this stairwell. It was an unused stairwell. It was locked on both ends, the bottom and top, and there was a second stairway, and he identified that. So I didn't tell the psychic anything. He seemed to be right on target, And then we let him into the house, and he went right to the doorway, and he says, we have to go down here. And he went to the basement, and he described the scene that I saw when I was about 8 or 9 years old, about a woman crying on a bed, and there's blood everywhere. And then he said, by the way, there's 3 bodies underneath this dirt right here. So the basement had a dirt floor, and I said to my sister, well, we're not digging it up. Okay. We agreed to that. But it's so yours was in Illinois, and we seem to have a similar some story. Okay, so you had I wanted to ask you, what happened to the board? Did you ever get it down? Did you leave it up there?
Oh, no, he, being in construction, he had some very high ladders, and so he had to go and get this other ladder that was much, much taller. And when he got up on top, then he took another board and popped it out of the tree by hitting it. But we had a school teacher there, too. She had been a school teacher in her life. I had bought this library table, and sometimes, as we know, they come along with objects, furniture and different things. And I know that this closet door was close to where I had the library table, and it would open and it would close all the time. And sometimes on the door I could see like the alphabet and so on. And I found out that in a vision that her name, and that she said her husband worked on the trains and the railroad, and she said he carried a gun. And what she continued to tell me, he had apparently shot her. She was only in her 20s when she passed over. So she pretty well came with the library table. But I think one night, the thing that was really surprising, I was sitting there making out files, A to Z. And I thought, boy, I hope I bought enough, to get to Z, or I'll have to go back tomorrow and get some more folders. I looked back down, and I had 2 sets. I had 2 A's, 2 B's, 2 C's. And I had the complete thing from A to Z. And I called my son. He was sitting there, and my husband then, and I said, oh, my gosh. I said, I can't believe this. I said, a split second, I look away, and I said, come over here. And I did. I still have those files.
Now, how do you think that happened? I mean, we're talking about, did they match each other? Were they the same kind of paper, same kind of color?
Yes, they were. But we had so much transported, so many things, sometimes solid things taken, be gone a while, then they would be back or whatever. But Katie, of course, who everybody wanted to see Katie if they could see her. But she had died in that house. Now, this is one of them that did. Katie
was a child.
Yes,
Katie
she
was
died.
A small child. Okay.
5 years, and she would have been 6 on the 21st of December of the year that she died. She just liked, that few days it being Christmas. But I remember that she would let me know she hid in this one closet from her father. He was a very, very cruel man. And she would come and get old dolls that my children had, and a little buggy. We'd find it in the closet, dolls in the closet. And she would just get little stuffed animals, all kinds of things. And the thing about this little buggy that moved around all the time, it was a little wicker buggy. I would come upstairs to where it usually sat, unless she moved it, and you could see the tracks starting across the room, and then along the wall, the dresser was there. And you wouldn't see any more tracks until you walked around on the other side of the dresser, like they came right out of the other side of the dresser, and go to the closet.
So this is tracks like in the carpeting or something?
Yes, tracks in the carpeting.
Oh, my God. Oh, my goodness.
So,
did you ever take pictures of those things?
Oh, yeah. I have video of everything. I have tubs of pictures and videos. I remember the one day, though, that I was just so sad, so shocked when I saw this. I opened the door to get some clothing out, and that was the closet she hid in from her dad. And she had taken one of the baby dolls, and it was hanging by the neck from a light, a chain on a light. And that let me know right there that she was showing me what happened to her. So that was really heartbreaking.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
And
was.
about what year do you think she lived? Did you get the time frame in which she was alive?
Yes. She passed in 1867.
Wow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So he hung her. There probably wasn't a light switch in 1867.
I think he choked her. I think that's
He
what
choked her.
But that was a way to show me with that symbol.
Yeah.
So you had some things, and here, we do have a lot in common.
Although I never saw a doll hanging by its neck. No, mainly apparitions. They like to watch over me when I was sleeping as a child, and I think one of them was my maternal grandmother, who my mother told me that she was pregnant with me and never got to tell her mother that baby number 3 was on the way because she was too sick and she was like in a coma. Mm-hmm. So I would see this woman at the foot of my bed, but and I think most of the people that died in my house were adults. It would have been interesting to have a child. They didn't, but I could sense the energy of the discarnate beings. I describe them as humanoid, although we're going to get into the aliens within. I suspect, looking back on my childhood, that some of it was extraterrestrials or interdimensionals that were not necessarily discarnate human beings. So I'm piecing that together over time, especially the more I interview other people and learn, about the subject. And I love, interviewing people like yourself, because we're few and far between that, most people are terrified with ghosts and they run out of the house screaming. But I think since I was raised with them, I was more relaxed about it. But when I started to think about how it wasn't accepted by normal human beings, like my girlfriends and stuff like that, and they'd say, "Oh, I'd be scared to death. How do you live in this house?" I would find myself thinking, "Oh, I'm crazy, and how do I live in this house, and why am I not afraid?" And then I'd find myself feeling a little bit afraid. And so that's one of the reasons I got married and moved out of the house at 18. At some point, I couldn't resolve that conflict in my mind, and I said, "I'm getting out of here." So I don't. But you know what? They followed me. So it wasn't necessarily the house. It was because I can see the dead. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about that. I don't know if that's true for you. Are you still in that house?
I am, and I still see. I see them everywhere. I mean, I don't hospitals, schools, graduations, you name it. That's just my life. I mean, my son did too. So yeah, we see them everywhere.
What was that? Was your father or grandfather? Who knocked the board out of the tree? That was your father?
That was my husband.
Mm-hmm, that was your husband. Your husband. Uh-huh. Sorry, I got confused.
It's okay.
What did he say? This board.
He was pretty confused for a while about it because he couldn't see or hear them, but he knew the way things got moved around and all the things happening. He certainly knew there was something going on in that house. Especially, like the fan flying through the room in the kitchen and in the middle of remodeling. And I told him, I said, they're not harmful at all. I said, what's happening is, what if we just moved in a new house and then somebody came in and started tearing out everything that you built? In other words, right. We were remodeling the house and they weren't comprehending what we were doing. So it occurred to me when I was there by myself to just sit down and start talking to them like I'm talking to you. And I had told Joseph, that why we were doing what we were doing. And I never had any more trouble.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I find, when I was a child, I really didn't have a lot of communication with them, but I ended up marrying my husband, who was a psychotherapist, and he had studied with Bill Baldwin about, helping discarnate ghosts cross over and communicating with them. So we developed a technique of communicating with them because I'm very psychic like yourself, and there's no way of escaping them. So it's like, okay, well, if you're here and you want to talk to me, what do you want to say? But I want to stick with you for a while here. And my husband did come home. I've got to get him on the in here and on the show. But what I wanted to I wanted to track back. So you had 7 people. Let me write this down. You had the 5-year-old child, the cleaning lady.
And the
Now, what
overseer.
did the cleaning lady? Okay, and the overseer.
Mm-hmm.
And who else?
The garage man.
Garage man.
And the lumberjack. And
Okay.
Joseph, the slave.
The slave.
And the school teacher.
The lumberjack and the school teacher. Okay, so how did you identify all these people as these things?
I began to see them, and we began.
Okay.
And they would do just all kinds of nice things. If I lost something, as you probably heard a lot of stories, then you go right back and there it is. And I got to where I would, if I needed it and I had to leave and use whatever, I would ask for help and I would have it. I would get it right away. We began to communicate, my son and I, with them, just like you're communicating with me. And we just had a really good relationship. And I was told as the years went by that at some time in the future, around the time my son would have to go home, that they would all be leaving too. And they would leave. Yeah, and they would leave first. We had tried to talk them over into the light in the beginning, but they did not want to go. And Katie said she would not leave Mommy. But, yeah, so I knew that they were there teaching us many things, actually. I mean, we were really learning a lot. This had, of course, never happened before to us. So they were very protective. When I would leave the house, I would just say, Joseph, watch the house. And I think I had better than any burglar alarm system you could ever buy. I think if somebody would have came in, they would have known it right away.
Wow.
Yeah, so we had quite a relationship.
Well, that brings to mind a question. So your son, did he have an illness his whole life, or how did you know he was going to leave at a certain point?
Because I knew he reincarnated back, that we had made this promise in other times. Of course, I would be back first to be the mother. And I was also...
Keep talking. Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot to turn the mic.
That's okay. I was also... I died in a car wreck when I was 16. And when I was on the other side, I was told many, many things. And I hadn't even had my children yet. So, you see, I had a lot of life to live yet and to bring these little souls waiting in the wings to bring them into the world. So I was sent back. And most of that memory there was erased until certain times because, you're not to know all that before. You need to go through your experiences.
Okay, so you had an NDE at 16, and you were shown your future.
Well, yeah, it was really a DOA. And then my son, when he was in his 20s, after he got out of the service, he had a DOA. He drowned, his heart stopped, drowned in his fluid, pneumonia, and so on. And I have written his experiences in the books. The reason when I'm writing the books, the other side, my teachers told us to document everything and to write the books. And I think it helps a lot of people to take the fear out of them, fear of passing, the fear of different things. And they're meant to be a tool to help people. just all kinds of things.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me slow this down a little bit. Go back to your DOA. So you had a car accident,
Mm-hmm.
and you were dead. What was the cause of your death?
I was married very young, and I was riding with another couple. They had a little boy, and they were based in Texas, the same base my new husband was at, and I was going to join him. Two drunk airmen came over a big hill about 25 miles from the base, and my friends, they tried to steer the car to the other side of the highway, but it came through my door. So
Wow.
that was the last thing I knew.
And what year was this?
Oh, gosh. You got me on that one. I have to think back of all that stuff. I was only 16. So.
Okay, well, anyway, so you were, I'm a little bit confused. So this was this lifetime, but they revived you, or this was a previous lifetime you came back?
Yes, I did. I died in that wreck, and I remember this wonderful heavenly voice speaking to me quite a while. It seemed like to me. You know, I will say this: when things like that happen, sometimes the last thing you're thinking about is going back. You don't even. At least I may not be able to speak for everybody, but you don't want to leave where you are. I mean, it's just something undescribable. So that's. But I got sent back, and I found out later on that the ETs were involved with working on me through that time that I was DOA. And
what kind of damage was to your body?
It was mainly the neck up because of the windshield. Yeah. So it was pretty bad.
Did they have to restart your heart?
You know what? I never asked. I was 16. Oh. I don't know. I just all I know is I didn't come to for a long time later, and my head and face was like a mummy's, bandaged, and it took me a long time to recuperate. They were taking pictures of me at that time because I remember them asking my permission. My face was really, I guess, a terrible mess. And and then later on, when my son's grown and in the Air Force, studying up in Washington at Walter Reed Hospital, they're studying some of the really bad car accidents. And he called me all excited. He couldn't hardly talk, and he said, "My gosh, Mom," he said, "I can't believe what happened today." And he tells they're watching this woman and all these, what they did to her, and then all these bandages is on her, and then in time they begin to start taking these bandages off, and he said, "I thought I was going to faint, Mom. It was you." And and he said, "Why didn't you ever tell me?" I said, "You kids weren't even born yet. I didn't even think about ever telling you." So what a way to find your mother, you know.
Yeah, here's my mother in a car wreck. Oh my goodness. Well, that's amazing. Well, let me go over a couple more things about that. Well, you said you went over and you were talking to. I had a near-death experience where it's a pretty horrendous situation, but this man grabbed me and I died after he abused me, and I was on the other side. I was dead. And then my guides and other beings came to me, and they said, and it was like you said, it's very beautiful. You don't want to leave there, right?
Right.
And they showed me the timelines that would happen if I were to stay dead. That's the best way to describe it. And they had like 4 or 5 variations on the theme, and they were all negative for my family. If I remained dead, which felt very good where it was, in one timeline, my dad would go to prison because he killed the guy who assaulted me, and my mother would go to prison because she didn't protect me from the guy, and in another one, my sister suicided because she couldn't resolve her baby sister dying, and another one, my brother had all this bad stuff happen because he couldn't resolve his baby sister dying. And then I made a decision. I said, "Oh, I'll go back. I have to go back. I can't stay here and have that happen." And upon thinking that, I was revived and popped back into my body. And I had been dead, like you said, for some time. And it was beyond logic. They say that if you're dead for so long, you have brain damage and all that stuff. Hey, that's what happened to me. No, but I came back and seemed to be undamaged. In fact, I had no real memory of it for a while until when I was much older. It came back to me at a future date. So when you came, were you in a coma for a while? Is that what happened?
Yeah, I couldn't remember when I started coming to. They didn't know who I was at the hospital where I ended up. They had no idea because my identification was somewhere in that wreckage, and the couple with me, and they had the little boy, they were just bummed up a little bit, and someone had taken them on to their apartment around the base. Well, they were probably in shock. So when I'm ever coming to, they don't know who I am, So that was all.
Goodness.
Yeah, that was a process to go through until they got a hold of my husband then eventually. But he told me something. He never talked about seeing or hearing anything, but he said when they woke him, he was just dreaming that I had died in a wreck. And he didn't tell me that for several years later. And I thought, wow, he was getting just what happened.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So your husband was at home in bed and didn't know that anything had happened except he got it in the dream.
Yeah, he was
and
at
who
the
woke
base.
him?
I don't. Probably his commander. He was living at the base. I was just going there to join him. So he was still living on base. So I imagine I would say whoever was over his squadron or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But, my goodness.
I don't remember how they knew who I ever was.
Yeah, you were Jane Doe, the famous Jane Doe.
Yeah.
Who's Jane Doe? Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
And so, well, I guess the couple eventually became aware that, well, they knew your name, right? Yeah, they knew who you were.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. You never got the story of how they figured out who you were?
The only thing I could ever figure was the married couple I was with their little boy. Maybe they had went ahead and gave that information to the ambulance crew or somebody like that, and it just probably took time for them to track things down. Is all I could figure. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so your son was at Walter Reed Hospital, and he's going through his training, and he sees these car accident pictures, and it's you.
Yeah.
So, when your son, how did you know that you and your son have this relationship where you keep
one thing
together?
One thing I'll back up. He was in medicals. Okay. How he happened to be studying these pictures. He was right. Always working in medicine. I'm sorry. What was your question?
You said that you tend to come back and reincarnate together because you're like companions and you have missions together. When did you come to that awareness? Correct me if I'm not saying that right.
When he was around 5 years old, maybe 5.5, he told me, he told the family that he wouldn't live very long, that he knew he would die young. And I don't recall him going into anything further. It was like he was just reminding me and letting them know. And what a shock. I mean, and you're looking at your child and wondering what, where he got this. Yeah, because they only let me start having my memories a little bit at a time. I was raising 4 children in a row, and we were working on this house, and sure, I would see things happening, hear things and all that, but we use that word that's really shouldn't even be a word, coincidence, because there is no such thing. It's just the way we describe. Yeah. So that's how I began to know, and as my children got older and the house was so busy, they didn't leave. It didn't seem like they ever left. They just lived there with us, I mean, you'd hear day and night. And that's how I got so many pictures and videos and communication all the time. And the like you mentioned earlier, this vortex, I'll call it, because it was like watching Grand Central Station, through the night when I would lay down to finally go to sleep. I mean, I could just lay there and watch all kinds of things moving back and forth and beings and so on, until I would just get so sleepy. But it was a very busy place.
Very busy place.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and that was similar. Why I would, I always wondered why they gave me the biggest room in the house. I'm the youngest. I'm the baby, and there's 5 people in my family, and it's like, why are you giving me the biggest room in the house? This would be the master bedroom, right? But in that room, it seemed to be a Grand Central Station, and there were noises in the attic above my head, and the same thing. And I got weary of it. It's like, oh, so much. I need to go to sleep, and so I would just, grab the blankets and pull them over my head, and I'd say, "Would you please go away?" to whoever was staring at me. It was kind of rude, like, "Oh, there's a person staring at me. Geez, go away. I'm trying to sleep." So I understand that feeling, but you do eventually get tired. People would think, "Well, why aren't you afraid?" Or "How can you sleep when there's these things flying around you?" And you just get exhausted. It's like, I have to sleep. I'm a human being. I have to sleep. So you do fall asleep. Now, your son, how old was he when he actually did die, and what was the cause of his passing?
He was 44. He just had his birthday. And he died on Palm Sunday after his birthday and on his sister's birthday. In fact, her birthday's the 16th, coming right up, and it's his day of passing over. So, and it was Palm
March.
Sunday. Yes. And he was so spiritual. He just came into this world. He just helped everybody. And even when he was sick all those years, he never complained one time, and he was still helping people. And then all the truth was given to me from the other side, that he had taken this on to show and teach love and compassion to others. So he chose to be sick like that those years and to help people, but he was teaching a lot of things involved, not with just sitting somebody down and saying this and this. He just had such compassion for people and such empowering words for people, and he just helped a lot of people, but he had chosen.
Oh.
Yeah. So.
What did he have? Was it like cancer or something?
Yeah, and he also, what was so bad towards the end, the chemo, does so much damage. I mean, it can help, and he had remissions, and that was wonderful at those times, but he died of adrenal gland failure. He was in a catch-22. The prednisone, they said he had enough in him for 10 men. Just so you know what that means. But if he wasn't on the prednisone, he would have passed anyway. But they were trying to keep the adrenal glands going, So, yeah.
Well, that's very sad. Is your husband still with you?
No, he isn't. Let's see, he passed away about 2 years after my son did. That was so.
Wow. Well, that was probably a very sad time. But your son came to you after he passed. Is that what happened?
Oh, yeah, I saw him immediately. I mean, immediate. We always had a bond. I'll never leave you, because we knew we worked together in every lifetime. And the moment that he passed, the life support shut off. And I said at that time, I thought later, why did I say that? But then I knew right after. I said, oh, if I could just see your heart beat one more time instead of feel, because my hand was on his chest. And the life support came on by itself, and the nurse called out, she said that can't be, because it showed everything on him as perfect. And when I looked back, there he stood. I could see him. And he was in this most beautiful, he was 6'4", this silver sparkling light. And he's been with me ever since. Of course, he stays away and does other things, but he's back and forth, And we talk mind to mind, or however, So thank God that he can do that.
It's quite a wonderful feeling when they do that. Both my mother and father came to me upon their passing, and then I've had a lot of people, and I always, like I said earlier, wonder why me. And when I ask, why are you coming to me, and they say, because we can see you seeing us. We can see that you can see us. And so I also had Michael Jackson, which was very unsolicited. I did not, sit down and try to contact him. And he was very upset when he left his body. I wasn't like a fan or anything. I'm much older than he is. But I helped him cross over. I know that people can help people who are dead cross over. So my husband and I worked with him. And then last year, I haven't had anything this year. I'm not looking for it. Last year, David Bowie and the other one that passed, David Bowie and Prince. They come when you're sleeping, right? And then they play songs in my head. So I wake up and I go, oh, honey, they want me to talk to him because... And I'll say, this song playing. In fact, I had to look it up. I go, who sang this song? And I looked it up. I go, oh, yeah, that was Prince, right? I think it was Little Red Corvette. I go, this song, it won't stop. Help me, I'm being haunted. And then we'll do a session where we'll allow them to speak without taking me over, and just allow them to talk through me. And then it's like, what do they want? And David Bowie was upset that he was dead, and Prince was elated. He said, I'm so free! He was excited. So, that's the bottom line. It was a long conversation. But well, that's exciting that you have this relationship. And I know it feels really good. And when I say to people, well, my parents aren't really gone. They're kind of like right here over my right shoulder. And if I need them, I just talk to them, and they will talk to me. There's still that sadness because they're not in the 3D physical world, but there's that awareness that they're always with you. So how did you feel when you had that happen?
Well,
what was your emotional state?
I was. I'm trying to think of the word. I knew he would do something. I knew he would. Just like if I had went first, I would have. We both always saw my mom and dad. They were around all the time, like you're just talking about. That's why I try to write these books. We are eternal. And only the physical is passed away. The part that we don't need. That we needed it here on Earth. That's it. But yeah, I was so happy, and I remember on one Valentine's Day, the very next year, I was talking to a friend of mine that they just loved my son, and they were telling me how much they missed him. And all of a sudden, I heard this big noise, and he didn't use a bow and arrow, but he collected antiques. He had this bow, and the bow had been stored, and the noise I heard was it had come flying across the room and landed in the middle of the carpet. And it was Valentine's Day, So Yeah,
He had a sense of humor.
yeah, oh yeah, he always had, he had the best sense of humor. He was always kidding and laughing and stuff. But I know when my dad passed away, he kept telling me when he would come to get my mother, she had MS, sick 19 years. And Dad was sick 12 of those, so neither one could do anything. So when he went, I knew my mother could see him all the time, see Dad, and he came to me and I could see him. He kept telling me the closer it got for her, he said, I will be the one to come and get her. He said, I'll take your mother's hand and then we'll be together again. That's exactly what happened. And at the funeral, I do see a lot of people that have passed at their own funerals. And they're kind of taking in, hey, you know, there's that guy that I didn't know if he even ever liked me. They're talking to me, and I sat there and I looked up, and although it was my mother's funeral, there stood my dad and my mother, and there was a big red heart between them, and they were just smiling. And see, he had came to get my mother. Well, after the minister came to me, and he said, can I ask you something? And I said, yes. And he said, did you see something? He said, I have never seen such a serene look, and you were kind of smiling. And he said, you saw something, didn't you? And I told him the story. And I was so happy because he said, I believe every word you said. He said, I have seen things myself.
Oh, wow. Well, that's lovely. That's lovely. And that was one of the gifts that Michael Jackson, he had pulled me over into his realm in my mind's eyes. Not you don't see it through your eyes, you see it through your mind's eyes. But it was very clear. And he said, well, I want to give you something for working with me. And I go, what's that? So he pulled over my mother and father and my husband's mother and father. And he said, see, your parents all know each other now, and they're enjoying watching it to you, how much you love each other. And I went, wow, that's really great. So there's a lot of sweetness you can get from this if you go into this space like you're talking about. And I think people see it when they believe it. It's our belief structure that stops it so many times. What I used to do when I was a kid, we're coming up in the break. We only have about a couple of minutes here, and then we're going to pick up with your other two books when we come back, and I'll get in Dr. Lessin in part of the conversation. But have you been able to show people these ghosts if they're around you? Like you can point them out, and then all of a sudden they see them too?
Well, yeah, like if I had company and they were in the kitchen and they were in the dishes and making all this noise and so on, I would have to kind of explain, but I didn't try to get them to see them because I knew they couldn't. You know, I knew they wouldn't be able to. But the pictures, all these pictures I have, they're really good. I have some really good ones, and that's why I sent a few over.
Yeah, the ones you sent me are good.
Mm-hmm.
I have them on my page I created for Ruth Ann on aquarianradio.com. So listeners, please feel free to go over to aquarianradio.com and click on the Ruth Ann Friend page, and you'll see the ones that Ruth Ann sent to me. So they're wonderful. I'd love to see even more. I didn't ever think of taking pictures when I was a kid, but that's a great idea that you documented it. I would invite girlfriends to stay over. I'd say, you want to see a ghost? And they go, yeah, you know. I say, well, tell your mom you're coming to a sleepover. And it wasn't every time, but I'd say it was 3/4 of the time, you know. If they were open-minded, they would see something, and some of them saw even more than I did, you know. And one time, like they do things like you're saying, they do physical things. One time I had a little lamp with a skinny post and a wide base and a light bulb on the top, and they broke it right in two, right in front of our eyes. They want to show you, we're here. Now, how do you think they can move things? If they have no bodies, what are they using to make objects move?
I think they do it just like when we get broken down into molecules and energy. I think they just break it down into energy. And sometimes I would ask my son, did they tell you where they have taken this? Like we had a holy box from years ago when they used to take them in a buggy to people when they didn't have modern cars and so on. And it had prayers in it for the sick. And it sat on my dresser. And one time it was gone a week. And David told me immediately, I said, David, where did they take it and what are they doing with it? What are you getting? And he said, it's being blessed, Mom. It'll be back. So about a week later, I opened my closet door and it was balanced on the rod of my clothes. And I knew when I touched it, I better be ready to catch it. But that was part of the portal. That was just part of the portal. So they would bring and take things that way.
It's almost like they're jokesters. I had this watch that an old boyfriend, I really loved him, but I couldn't marry him, so we cut each other free, but I kept his watch, and the thing disappeared, and I looked everywhere. Same thing, like you said, everywhere. And I just gave up and went to bed, and I came down the next morning, and it was sitting right on my keyboard. Oh. And that's a break. Okay, we'll be back in about 5 minutes, and we'll pick up with Ruth Ann's other 2 books. Lots to talk about.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Starting at 4 p.m. Thursday, January 19th until midnight, Friday, January 20th. Any donor of $50 or more will receive a seed pack with 16,500 seeds worth $150. All non-GMO heirloom vegetable seeds sponsored by the seed company Mike works for to provide the seed packs. Make sure when you're making the donation to include in the buyer's notes your address and note special seed promotion. Includes the following seeds. Speed it up for your time and convenience. Arugula, slow bolt, asparagus, Mary Washington, bean, blue lake bush, beets, Detroit dark red, broccoli, Carol Braze, Brussels sprouts, Long Island, cabbage, red acre, cantaloupe, Hale's best jumbo, carrots, scarlet nantes, cauliflower, snowball white, celery, Utah, collards, Georgia southern, corn, delicious, cucumber, Boston pickling, eggplant, black beauty, honeydew, green flesh, kale, blue Scotch curl, lettuce, butter crunch, lettuce, iceberg, lettuce, Paris Island, lettuce, red romaine, okra, spineless, onion, yellow Spanish, pea, green arrow, pumpkin, Big Macs, radish, cherry bell. That's right. If you donate $50 or more, you get this seed pack free.
Most guys freeze. That's your cerebral cortex looking for an answer it doesn't have.
See? Even your brain knows you're screwed.
The body's filling with adrenaline right now, whether you know it or not. Your heart's beating fast. It's getting a little harder to breathe. The neurobiological system is telling it to run, but your knees are too weak to move.
Fear is not real. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It is a product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. That is near insanity. Do not misunderstand me. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice. We are all telling ourselves a story.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. 100% listener-supported radio. Reporting to danger. Unafraid. Right here, where information never sleeps. Revolution. Radio.
Who are we? Where do we come from? Are you curious about the origins of the human race? Join me, Gavin McCall, and a variety of guests on Ancient Humans, where we decipher world events, explore scientific theories, personal stories, myths, mysteries, and lore about the history of the human race.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent news story, and I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Hey folks, you got the Nighthawk here. Do you have a favorite host? Well, imagine if you will having all the broadcast shows from 2013 to listen to anytime you want. Awesome deal, huh? Anyway, so stop by freedomslips.com and order the entire 2013 library of your favorite host for just $30. Not only do you help with the station funding to keep us on the air, you also help the host because they get half of the net on every order. Also, we have Revolution Radio's all-time favorite shows all on one disc. The details are really broad, so you'll have to visit the website and go look at the details yourself. It's, again, www.freedomslips.com/season2013.htm. And get your favorites. First come, first serve, 7 to 21 days for delivery. Thank you. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps, including me. Later.
We've got to stop them! They're going to kill us all!
Aloha and welcome back to the Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And I am your host, Janet Lessin, and I do have my co-host here, Dr. Sasha Lessin, and we are interviewing Ruth Ann Friend and talking about her 3 books. And next up, we were talking about the first book, Under the Rainbow Crossing, and we're going to talk about aliens within our own selves and the story of David. But before we get back to our guests, I'd like to remind everybody to please go over to that donation button on freedomslips.com and donate what you can, $1, $5, $15, $20, $100, whatever you can donate is greatly appreciated, and we do thank you very much for your donation. Mad Painter, Thomas Becker, are there any specials or anything we should know this week?
No, ma'am, just we need your money.
Please send money. Well, we need your donations, and they keep us on the air, so we appreciate very much. We like being able to bring you these shows. Dr. Lessin, would you like to say something?
Something. I like to say something. It's so much fun to say something.
Here's something here.
I'm sorry about jumping in really late, but I find for years and years I gave this exercise to my students to say, just relax and then picture in your mind somebody who already died, who's passed on, and just imagine that you could talk to them. And after a while, you could even put yourself in their place and use their vocal apparatus and talk to you from their perspective and just hear what they have to say. And so when I heard about what your books are about and what you're about, I thought, whoa, that's the same thing that I have people do. Well, sometimes when they do it, they really connect, and it isn't just a fantasy. It starts that way sometimes, but it turns into they really are having contact. So I'm really eager to tune into what you're going to share.
Welcome back, Ruth Ann. I'm really curious. I know you started out with people, that are on the other side. How did you and David get into the subject of extraterrestrials, which is your new book, Aliens Within Our Own Selves?
The way this happened was through those years with the family in the house, I'll call them. And by the way, I told you I think that they would be leaving right before my son, so they only make an occasional visit back now. But back to the other, on the ETs, all of these things were kind of happening at once. But the ETs, when they told me how to write the books, and they titled each book, they said I would write 5. And Edgar Casey, one of our main teachers, he was also always with us. So they said that everything's in the timing, and I think we all pretty well know everything is in the timing. They said if I tried to write one big book and put all of this in at the same time, people would not understand it because we lived in many worlds. So this is how the books were written. The Spirits in the House and David, and then last of all, they told me to write this one, Aliens Within Our Own Selves. Now, since I document everything, this book has their words in it, their messages that they want people to know about. They said, your books will speak for us. This one, this last one. So, Aliens Within Our Own Selves, it's a book about what they want the world to know, and they want the world to know the truth. And I believe the messages in here, they're very inspirational. The ones that have always dealt with us, many different species, are the most loving and compassionate. They're Christ-like beings. So I explain a lot about our ET family through this whole book and what they want to say, and just exactly the way they say it, word for word.
That's wonderful. I guess let me pick up the piece that you mentioned. So the extraterrestrials, or the ghost in your house said they would leave before David died. How did you know they left, and when did they leave? Let's pick up that piece.
I knew the timing was right from some of the Christ-like beings, to go ahead and start directing them over. And I knew they needed to be on the other side back with their loved ones. They needed to go home. And so they kind of dwindled off some of the time, and I knew that their job was done. And I call it job because they opened my life to many things. They were teachers in their own way. And so that's how that happened.
What about the one that called you mother? Was that a
Katie?
bittersweet? Yeah, Katie.
Yes,
Katie.
yes, it was. But, she still comes back. If I don't hear her words, or when I wake up, there's those little footprints in the carpet around the bed. We don't have anybody else little in the house that has a foot that size. And so, and a lot of times I'll remember maybe something about her being there. But, yeah, I think she'll always do that until I move over. I do.
Well, I have a similar story. I'll just keep it brief. My mother died, and when she died, I was living in Hawaii here in Maui, and she came and got me astrally and took me back to the house that I had grown up in, which my family still owned, but my sister had she closed the doors because she had my parents in a home where she could take care of them better, because the old house was too drafty and cold, and she couldn't keep it warm enough for them in their senior year. So she came back and got me. She died around Christmas time. And and she said, see, they're gone. And we went through the house, and the stairwell that had always been closed was wide open. And we walked around, and she said, look, they're gone. And I knew they were gone. And then she took me. She says, you have to go now, because she was talking in high speed, so I was in this higher vibratory frequency. She said, it's not safe for you to stay here very long. And she took me and walked me and pushed me out through my front door, and then I was back in my bed here, and I popped up, and I went, whoa. So then that summer we went back, and my sister was gradually moving back to the house, and we went to visit it and went to the stairwell, and it was wide open, just as she had shown me. And I go, what's with this? This thing, it had been closed my entire life. I've never seen inside of it. It's always been closed, locked. Nobody knew where the key was. Nobody opened it. And, Louise said, yeah, we came in, it was wide open. So what my mother showed me actually happened in real life. So it was just a little aside there. Okay, so So you've gone from the ghosts to aliens. How did they come to you? What did they look like? Which species? Did you see them physically? Did you go with them on their ships, et cetera, et cetera?
Yes, pretty well all of that. I'll never forget the first time many, many years ago when I woke up, and there were 4 of them standing there, and they were the little grays. I kind of think they get kind of a bad rap a lot because I've never experienced anything but this magnificent love. It can't even be explained. Comes from their eyes and so on. And when you said something earlier, they said the same thing. We do not be afraid. We are just here to observe. So I never was afraid. I mean, in fact, I was so thrilled to see him, I couldn't hardly stand it. I thought, oh, my family's here, my part of my family, whatever. And my son, he was always getting these things too. So that's how it began, and they just came all the time. And my son had bought me a moon necklace. It was just a round moon because that's my sign when I was born. And he thought I would like it. Well, what they did in the beginning that was so humorous was we would come home from the hospital or wherever, and my fan over my bed, the ceiling fan, that moon necklace would be hanging there, and it would always be facing north. So they told us that we needed to figure that out. Use your mind power. You know, they were always teaching and working with us. Well, then maybe later that day, I would go in my room and I would find this scarf hanging with the moon necklace, and it would be around the blade, so beautiful. I've got all these pictures. It's just beautiful how they would do this scarf. So I went and sat down on the staircase, and I thought, what are they trying to tell me to figure out? And something told me, to get up and go look at the scarf. And in the label, it was made by Dimensions. That's all it was on the label, Dimensions. And what they were telling me was it was always north. So when they came in the evening, I asked them, where are you from? And they said, the North Quad. I said, well, where is the North Quad? And they looked at me and said, that would be like asking you, where does the Wizard of Oz live? and they just had such humor. And they got serious and said, I forgot how many, I have it written down, light miles and all this and that distance. They said, if we explain this to you now, you would not know what we were talking about. So that's as far as that went. But different species worked with us, and they came from many places and many other planets and galaxies and the star people and what we are. And they told us later on that we kind of came from all kinds of places because we were on the ships so much. And that's how come I thought, oh, that makes sense, because there was so many different species. See what I mean? That, yeah, so that's how that went. And thank God I always did that. David and I had exactly the same experiences. Even if I didn't see him when I first got on the ship, I would see him later or whatever. And they were really teaching us a lot of things, universal language to you name it. I mean, it was, and they would reprogram us. They would re-energize us. We went so much, they said that the breakdown was causing, that's why I was so tired and losing my energy so fast. So they would take us and let us know they were going to, and they would take care of those things. And many of his miracles he had is because they would take him and work on him. So he lived a lot longer than the medical world ever believed he would have.
Were you always wearing the same bodies, or were you ever there in a body from earlier reincarnations or anything like that? Or were you always in the body, this one now that you have?
As far as I know, I only saw myself different a very few times. they said what was so hard on us was the breakdown all the time, because they came all the time. It wasn't just like once every 3 months, 6 months. I mean, it could be night after night. Yeah, I mean, we were going all the time. They were really working with us, and they said, you belong with us, and we were here for these certain things to do. They were just teaching us all the time, and I remembered they would take us back and let us look at past history, past lives. You could be whizzing by Joan of Arc, this, that, and it was fascinating. It was just fascinating.
Did you see anything like the story of Jesus or anything like that when you were looking in past lives?
Did I see the story of what?
Yeah, Jesus.
Very famous stories.
Yes. That we were. I put that in these books. Yes, I remember being in the biblical times, and I seen one of my daughters in one particular one, and I was teaching at the college then, Reiki master. So I was teaching Reiki, and I saw one woman in the class that was someone I knew very well in that day. So it was just exciting and fascinating, and I kept track of everything, and that's what they wanted, because they wanted to teach people that are so afraid, that life goes on, and we keep evolving, and life is eternal. So I had a lot to keep track of.
Wow.
I'm glad you were such a good record keeper. I was told that I was an historian as well, keeping track of things and reporting. Yeah, I don't know if you ever knew that. But one of the things I wanted to know, did they always take you physically, or were you taken astrally some of the time in your spiritual form?
Yeah, we were taken both ways. It just depended, I guess. We saw different beings. Some I could never even describe. And, just because somebody else might have thought, oh, they're ugly or something, hey, they were beautiful, I mean, their compassion, their love. And I told David, I said, I bet we look hideous to a lot of them, But, yeah, it was really something, and they still come, and I'm still connected with them.
And I've had the same thing. You and I have a lot of similarities. We're going to have to sit down and talk for a long time. But, there are so many species you can't even begin to describe them. I know that in the modern UFO lore, they try to catalog them, and they'll say they look like a bird, the aliens, or, the reptoids. But there are some species that are beyond human description, because we don't have any kind of forms that resemble them whatsoever. But it's like if you've ever taken a spider. We have these spiders here. One time I captured it, and I was in a Tupperware, and I was looking at it, and when I just slowed down and looked at it, I said to myself, wow, this is so beautiful. Yeah. Look at what nature has created. It's so detailed, and when you slow down, you see they have spots on their whatever it is, their fur. Yeah. And so there is beauty within everything. So yes, you can think it's hideous because it's something strange to you, but they can also become very beautiful, because whoever is the designer of all these species.
They're all designers. That's the whole thing. All skyfaring people that we've studied do all kinds of stuff. We even use it with crimper technology. Let's see what happens when we make intelligent spiders.
Right. Now, for me, they tended to show me beings that were bipedal with like a face and eyes and hands and walking on two legs. Do you recall seeing species that were sentient life but not in bipedal form?
Octopoids
and things like that.
Right now at this moment, I really don't, seeing maybe those kind, and then again, that may be some of them I saw that was close, that wasn't very tall and close to the floor. Is that how you saw them?
Well, yes, they come in all sizes, and so they tended to have them show up that are, like my size. Although I've taken photographs out the front window here at my house, And, the little fairies of folklore, there are sometimes actual fairies, and, they have wings, and they just look like Tinkerbell. And it's like, oh, my God.
They're the devas. They're
divas.
Nature
Devas.
spirits.
Nature spirits, yeah. So, now, you're saying here in your description, they want the truth told about them and why they come to Earth. What is the truth, and why do they come to Earth?
Well, there's this book is all full of their messages, and because they've been so misunderstood, and the movies have made them look horrible and scary, and all kinds of ways. They're coming all the time. They've been trying to help Earth, and they do a lot of things that would never be known. A lot of catastrophes that could have been 100 times worse. They're just doing a lot of things, but there's some messages in here about Earth people needing to shape up because of time, and there's just all kinds in here, and they want people to realize, Mother Earth is so precious and so important. The planet Earth is so important in the whole system out there that if something would go wrong here, if something doesn't get straightened up before long, it would cause a complete catastrophe throughout the universes. It's kind of like in a bowling alley when you're bowling and you hit that pin and all the rest go haywire, So there's a lot of information in here, and for some reason they wanted this one message put on the back of my book they wanted it on the back. Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, read it.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
Yes.
They're saying this part. Their purpose is, and then they're telling us, that the time has come for me to write this book, to teach others the real truth about them and why they come here. We both are a large part of their growing colonies, to let the ETs adopt and learn from us about the human demeanor and softness of emotions and personalities of the offspring. The new colonies will be ready to interact more as earthlings and humanoids. You both have shown us here about parental love, nurturing babies, emotional development, and most of all, love, and who we call our universal soldiers. You both have been universally celebrated by the Galactic Councils and Christ-like beings in your work. This is a success to you both, being so dedicated to the change of human development. The world one day will finally learn how to live together in love. War will be abolished and in time forgotten, except in history. The two of you who belong here with us are working for the greatest cause of all, love and compassion among all living earthlings. The spiritual movement now will be larger and larger to make the transitions needed before man completely destroys everything on the planet Earth. And they especially wanted that on the back of the book, so I definitely put it there.
They know people read the back of the books first.
That's the message.
That's the message. So,
way cool.
I have some questions on that. Okay, so what's going on? They're not going to let us destroy this planet, are they?
There's
like a insurance clause that they can't stop us, or you said that it's all interconnected, so it doesn't seem that they would allow something as vital and important as this planet Earth be destroyed if it's connected to other things and would affect them.
Well, they don't want it to be. They've been helping, like I said, in ways that people would never know. They help in all kinds of ways to keep everything going, and they don't want to see anything ever happen to planet Earth.
Good. Sasha, what did you want to say? Comment, question?
Well, just I'm struck with Behringer's idea that the strife here really has, if we took the essence of what we've learned because we were under duress, is we learned a lot of medicine, we learned how to use energy, and we learned all kinds of wonderful genetic stuff, things that if they weren't militarized, we have learned from the ETs, and they've given us, and our military has seized them, but they're already here. We've got the gifts if we can just use them. We know how to clean up the radiation. We know how to bring peace. I can bring people together for a week who have been enemies their whole life and let them cry like grandfathers together about the fate of their children because we're all their children. We know how to do it. The question is, how do we do it? And how do we do it in a way that takes the people that are invested in keeping the present matrix in place, still honor them for their contributions and not just diss and destroy them? That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think that that the different species are working with so many of us, just like yourselves, and they're trying to instill a lot of ideas and information. A lot of times, even when that person thinks they thought it themselves, that was their own thoughts. They're planted there. You know what I mean? And so they're trying very hard. And like I mentioned, the thing with the bowling ball, and the pins, and how that would just upset the entire universes if something happened to this one. So let me just say that they're doing the very best they can, and they're going to keep right on, and they don't want anything to happen to Earth.
Are they giving you any kind of specifics? I've lately been getting a series of downloads, and it's almost repetitive, but each time they repeat it, they add some additional things. And it's been going on for years now about a new structure for society. And it's it's sprung forth because of, I don't know if you know who Alex Collier is, but Alex Collier is a contactee. Started back in the 90s, and he did a series of YouTubes and interviews, and he said that the aliens, the Andromedans, wanted him to present them with a PowerPoint explaining money and what money was for, and so he did, and he went on the ship, and they said, well, that's all fine and dandy, but we don't get it, and how is it that you can charge human beings to live in a planet that they didn't ask to be born into? And so based on that, they keep getting systems, new systems. It seems like right now we have all the different political systems and religious systems, and none of them are working for everybody. They might work for an individual or for a country, but when they take the whole planet as a globe, we are one family, we are one sphere, and the air we breathe is everywhere. We can't pollute it one place and it doesn't reach the other place, the waters, etc. Are they giving you any more concrete solutions? Are you getting any kind of information like that?
Well, I think the one thing, just like in this message I read, this lets you know about the world because they said the world one day will finally learn how to live together in love. War will be abolished and in time forgotten except in history. So I think that's telling us a lot right there, that it's not saying that we're not going to have this world or it's going to be a disaster or something, but I believe there's going to be this great change to put it into that type of a world. And I think people are going to have to learn a lot more how to get along together and to do something else a different way. But
I think that one of the things to do is to look at the things that seem junk, the challenges, for example, the flood of refugees all over the world, as a stimulus and a challenge. And what I see in it is all this wonderful opportunity to learn from people of different cultures, the structure of different languages, so much that we can share, and that even though it feels junk that people in such terrible conditions have to flee where they are or to not starve or get killed, nevertheless, the end is this wonderful sharing of human knowledge.
I agree. And maybe this is what's starting to happen here, for this gradual change. I can't say some things because I'm not allowed to, but I can say what I've said.
Okay. What do they mean when they said, you are called our universal soldiers? What do they mean by that?
Because we do a lot of work with them, and we always have. And there's a lot of things going on that people will never be aware of. There's all kinds of warring in the universe. I know you've heard of all that, and it's true. There is. There's a lot of rogues, I'll call them, that create a lot of problems. And they've had us do many, many things when we're with them, alongside of them. So they started calling us their universal soldiers, and that's where that came from.
And it says here that you have been universally celebrated by the Galactic High Councils, plural, and Christ-like beings in your work. So I have been to several council meetings. Can you tell us a little bit about these Galactic High Councils?
Well, I can tell you that sometimes when they're getting ready to do something like that, which really threw us, I mean, we never even thought of anything like that. I came home one day with my son from the hospital, and coming in the front door, the cushions had been taken off of a sofa, and they had 4 facing the west, and they had 2 facing the east. Now, they always told us we were from all 4 directions, but the east was like the maybe strongest one. So we were going to be facing the east, and the 4 from the council, Galactic Council, would be facing the other direction, so we could face each other. They had a message. I do have messages from them that in their script, in their words, and so on. And the message let us know, this is all in the book, that night we were going to be taken to be celebrated. And the mother is to name the son, and the son is to name the mother. And that way, those names we would be known by throughout all the universes forever. So, but they said we could not tell each other what name we chose for the other until that night was over. So in other words, it would be the next day when my son would tell me what he named me, I would tell him, what I named him. So they said, we may let you remember, or we may not. Sometimes they did things like, sometimes they did things like that. I do know we went, and the next day when I got up, and finally when my son got up, I said, well, what name did you give me? And we shared these names, and I didn't put them in the book either. There's some things I can't put in the book. And so anyway, that's what would happen sometimes. And sometimes we had memory of things, or fighting in certain ways, doing different things. And sometimes they didn't let us carry all the memory because they said the human mind can only process so much at a time. So they never wanted to pile too much on us at once. And we went all the time with them, so they knew that would not be good for us because we're in our human world here.
Right.
So,
Can you access their computers if you need information? Will they help you find it?
I don't get it that way. I just talk to them. If I want to know something or something, I can just contact with them, and talk to them that way with telepathy, or if they come in where I'm at, and I see them, I just talk like that. I don't always do they did come on our computers many times in the beginning years, and I have all that on film too. When I got the computer, I didn't even know how to put a screensaver on, so we got it plugged in and going, and from then on they use the screensaver. So I don't know much about tech. So they would use it a lot. And my mother used it, my dad, way after they were gone. We had a lot of the different family of loved ones that they would use the computer. The message would just come out on the computer, rolling across the screen. So,
so Ruth, listen, either if you haven't asked them this yet, I really would like to know, how can the ordinary people of this planet make peace with the rulers so that there's everybody's light is respected? How can we have a peaceful resolution?
Well, I think that's why also in that message on the book was to let people know that we would have that kind of world. We're going to have that kind of world one day. In fact, there's other messages in there that talk further about that. I believe that the thing that they like to have recognized the most is love for one another and compassion. And some way or another, things are going to change eventually, and people will learn to be that way because it has to by the message that they gave. It has to. The one I read to you. But I don't know all the in-between things. But I think love and compassion is the number one things. And we're going to have to learn that. Pardon me?
I remember Tony Grant used to say, when you're dealing with a difficult person, you can sit there and your intellect can actively listen to them, so you're following their content. But at the same time, you imagine hearts floating from your heart to their heart. And even though you're listening to their content, your meditation is, I love you, I love you, I love you. I accept you, I love you, I love you.
I believe that because I do the same thing. My son did the same thing. And even people that might be talking cruel or vicious or whatever, we always kept doing that. I still do. And I imagine this pink cross on the forehead of love. And I always put that on their forehead also.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you're still in contact with him. I've noticed that my contact has accelerated, and there's something going on. Like last night, there was major kind of missing time, and yet there were things I remembered. What types of things are you getting now? We are living in very interesting times, which is the curse, but it's also very interesting to live in these interesting times.
Yeah, I know. That's why, just like you two and myself and probably thousands of others that have some insight into these things, we all need to be telling it and talking. And when they told me that I was going to be telling all about this, I thought, wow, me, I'm just a housewife, and that's the way I was thinking then. And they said, no, you're going to be speaking one day because you're going to speak for us. So I think I notice more and more people becoming more open-minded now, and they seem to be becoming more compassionate and loving. I see that a lot more than I used to.
Yeah.
You mentioned that there were 2 more books coming. Have you received what they're going to be about and their titles?
Yeah, they named all 5 of them way back, so I have the titles. And they're going to be more with this one. I couldn't have began to have gotten all their messages in, but it's full of their messages. So there will be a following book. Completely, if I can get them all in another book. It may be the other 2 books. I'll have to wait and see.
Well, I've been given a dictate with lots of books, and one of the things they told me on the 1st of January of 2017 is that I'm to compile a series of experiencer books, which are anthology books with compilations from many writers. So if you have a title or if you have a short story that you want to send me, and then I will put your bio and links to your books. It's about networking and getting the word out across the planet that, yes, there are thousands, if not millions of us that are having these experiences. And like the old testimonials of the evangelical churches, and testimonials actually stand up in a court of law. When there's an overwhelming amount of testimonials, people will start getting it and waking up en masse, and we will create this disclosure and ascension process, which is so necessary for these extraterrestrials who want to help us. That's how they're helping us. So anyway, I put together the first book in like about a month, about 32 days, had it ready by February 6th for my birthday for this 2017 UFO Congress, and I took it to the UFO Congress. And I think I remember seeing your table when I walked by you. So we've met in person.
Oh, that's, I kept thinking, why does she look so familiar to me? But there were so many people that, it's hard to always remember, but I just knew your face looked so familiar.
Yeah, I walked by and said hello and grabbed cards because I was just, I had a table and I had touched my table and I escaped periodically and I wanted to go and see the presenters periodically. And there's, it's 5-6 days, but it goes so fast and it's a wonderful opportunity to network and meet people. But each year I see that the experiencer phenomena is getting larger and larger, and yet when you go to these conferences, most of the presenters are still the nuts and bolts people. So the proceeds that we get from these experiencer books, I'm supposed to put into a fund and make experiencer conferences. So yes, you're definitely on the top of my list, and I will pull you up on the stage. So get your PowerPoint ready.
Boy, thank you very much, and that's very nice. And I'll when I get back to my home, I'll be remembering that when I sit down about and see what maybe I can send you, because I've got a lot of things that has happened and is happening.
You know, it's so hard for me to just take somebody else's thing and dictate what they wrote because I want to edit it. I want to write it in my way. And I just wonder if you have an artistic part of you that wants to edit this stuff.
No, honey, that's your obsession.
I tell you what, this is the first time I'd ever written anything, let alone when they told me that 5 books. And Edgar Cayce, he told me years ago, we remembered all the times being together before, my son and him and his little wife. And he said, way before Atlantis. And so in these books, you'll find Edgar a lot, and especially the last 2, David's story, this one.
Is Edgar Cayce back as David Wilcock?
I don't know. He did say he was coming back. He told me that a long time ago that he would be back, and he told me those years ago too when the extraterrestrials did. He said, "Yes, you will write the 5 books," and like I said, they were all titled then. And he said, "And one day they will be in my ARE library in Virginia Beach." So I got a letter not even a year ago, and the first 2 are already there. So I was so thrilled. Anytime, we only work with the high Christ-like beings, and they have never told us anything that wasn't absolute truth. I know that the others will go in there also, so.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I discovered Cayce as a young, I guess it was about 15 or 16 or something, and wonderful series of books. I read them all. It's been years. So is he still, I know some of the things weren't quite 100% on the timeline, but there was something about, he said that Russia would be we would learn from Russia eventually. Do you remember that part?
No, I sure don't. To tell you the truth, as close as we are, Edgar and David and I have never read all of his books. I know there's a lot of books out. My memory wasn't even in of our connection years ago, and I started noticing in the pictures in this Aliens book, I have a lot about Edgar, but he would leave this sign. I would come in the room, and that holy box would be open, the candles set up, and this healing prayer set up. And, of course, we had so much going on in the house, and I would think, well, I don't feel like that's one of the spirits here doing that. And there would be a great big EC drawn in the carpet, just clear as could be. And it would always... Yeah, it would be at the foot of the dresser, and the box set on the dresser. And my son had bought the box at an antique sale one time. we really valued it because it had been used for holy prayers and so on. So that kept happening, and then all of a sudden, I went to the library, the book fell out on my foot, and it was an Edgar Cayce. Well, then I noticed my son always had an Edgar Cayce book beside his bed, and I would see it, once he was out of the service, and then when he became sick, that book was always beside his bed, and it was what a little one, think on these things. And I asked David, I said, David, I said, you know who that is doing that, don't you? And he smiled and he said, yes, I do. So he stood back a lot of times and waited for my memories to start clicking in more. And he couldn't tell me because I had to remember myself. I had to go back and let them come in. So that was a thrill because then I started seeing Edgar in solid. And then he told us he was going to teach us the trance states, and he did. It was several months that we did this every morning, 3 days a week at 10 a.m. And I had a tape recorder, and I would go into trance, and David would ask me the questions, just like his wife used to ask him, Gertrude. And so we taped it all, and I remember when Edgar told us, he said, well, this is the last one coming up this week. And he said the time frame was perfect. He said, had you waited, we would have missed the time frame. So see, everything they keep reminding us is in timing. So we did the last one, and he's always with me in Reiki and other times too. So
what about David? How's your son? What's he doing? What does he do over there? Does he have a job? Does he? Yeah.
Well, he's on the ships a lot. But another thing is, after he passed, I asked him, I said, David, would you have permission to take and show me what you're doing there too? And I worked for the state for a while with AIDS patients. I was very honored to do this job. I had a feeling I knew what he was doing over there because we both worked on him. And he came and got me one night. And the next thing I knew, I was walking down a long hall. And I saw a man sitting in a chair down at the end of the hall, but there was another chair empty. And my son was carrying a gift with a big ribbon on top. And he said, Mom, you'll have to sit here a few minutes. I need to go in this other room. I'll be right back. So I sat down beside the man, and he opened a door and went into some room. When he came to get me, I walked in that room with him, and there was this huge round table. And they all turned and looked at me, and it was our clients, a lot that had passed over. And he was still helping them and helping them to adjust and so on. And I was so thrilled.
Still doing the same job.
Well, it was ones probably even maybe still passing, but they were on that side, and some had been there a while because I recognized them. I'd worked on them, and I thought how wonderful. He's helping them get, I'll call it settled in, and whatever maybe they're going to choose to do. But we choose. I mean, we chose what we were going to do this time. We all choose.
Oh, that's great. So has he told you about, like, how do they decide to come back and when, and will he wait to you so before he comes back? Or
there's a beautiful message, in this book, and I wrote it, of course, exactly as they left it, and they described about our soul and how we decide to do things, and about the council who works with us before we come back each time. It's all agreed on. It's agreed on by not only me, but the council also, and it describes it really well. So we make our plans.
Have you ever read the books have you ever read any of the books by Dr. Michael Newton and the Newton Institute, where they would regress or progress or whatever you call it, people into the life between lives period before they choose to reincarnate?
No, I haven't.
Where they are?
I haven't.
Okay, highly recommend. Well, that what you just described resembles what he said. That,
Oh.
And this comes from, I think it's now 40,000 cases of people that have agreed to be hypnotized, and they're all different, belief systems.
Mm-hmm.
But you make a decision to come back, and you actually can step into the body or the lifeline of the potential body that you're going to incarnate, and see what that's going to be like. But your son David said something that was very familiar to the Michael Newton Institute information, and he said, "I know that I'm going to be here a short time. I'm going to leave early."
Mm-hmm.
And so when you step into your future life, you often can see when you're going to leave, and that these lifetimes that are short are very, even like the real short ones, like the child comes and dies at 4 or 5, they're all important to teach the soul something that's doing it, plus the people that are in their soul group.
Well, another perspective is that we've already died a long time ago, and we're just time traveling back to see this movie a bit.
Yes,
yeah, that's true too.
Yeah,
we're already dead.
Yeah, I just think it's so interesting because I know we'll, it's like you said, usually choose something we're familiar with, and a lot of our loved ones now, they may be male or female, something the opposite the next time. We generally, I always explain that the foods we like, the colors, certain countries, so on, that's because we did it before and before, so we have those things that we want to do again.
You're even in a house you lived in before in another lifetime, which I find very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When I was a little bitty girl, my parents, we would walk by that house. They didn't have a car, and we just lived about 6 blocks from the park. And we would walk by that house, and I would stop and look at that house, and it was just kind of falling down mess then. And I always would stand and look at that house. I was drawn to it, and I was little. Something must have been telling me then.
So you married a man that knew how to fix it up.
Oh yeah, he built houses, yeah, and so we did it. We always did everything ourselves. So we worked really hard, and the kids grew up there, and they all loved that house, and I love it because that's where I know to be. But like I said,
so what made you decide, how did you get the house? What made you decide to get the house?
Looking for to buy a house, and we could have built a new one because that's what he did, but got the paper one night, and I saw this particular, I didn't know where it was, and I thought, let's see now, what street's that, and let's go look at this. See, I was led there because here we come to this old big Victorian that needs a ton of work, and I fell in love with it. And I mean, it was really in bad shape, but it was by a school. It was about a half a block, and I knew that all the kids would be going to school there. I just knew it. So spent many years redoing it and putting it back and so on. So I was just drawn back home.
I'd love to see a picture of it. If you think of sending it, that'd be great. Well, we only have a few minutes left, and I want you to, what else would you like to tell our listeners about your work and things that we have missed that you wanted to share?
Well, I really think the messages in this book's very important, and it explains it will answer a lot of questions, I believe, and I hope to get the sequel to it written as soon as I can, because I know I have more than enough information for another book, absolutely, and I just want them to try to not let the little things in life get to them, because we've got a lot to learn here, and we're here to learn. It's Earth School, and that was made.
Yes.
And I appreciate again you asking me on, and I loved our talk. I think we must be soul sisters and a brother there.
Yeah.
We're on the same wavelength.
Yes.
Are you going to be at any other conferences with your book so people can meet you and buy a copy? You can sign it for them, or how can
yes.
people?
I think it's Dulce. Is it Dulce, New Mexico? I'm going to be at one, July 1st.
Actually,
yes,
that's what I heard. There's one in Dulce.
Dulce,
Yes.
So
one of my other. This is going to be there. Karen Patrick. Yes.
Oh, so I'm open to speaking and getting started here because they've set this in motion. So I know that's the rest of my life work is to tell the truth about them and what they want known and what beautiful, loving, compassionate beings they are. And I want to spread the word.
Oh,
great. Sasha, you have any final words or questions?
I really love rapping with you. It's really nice to tune in. I feel inspired by your talk. Thank you.
Yes, you're very inspirational.
Well, thank you. We have a lot in common. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And does David have any things he wants to convey to us in this last minute before the music comes on?
He's making kind of a joke, but it's sweet. He said, I'm here to back my mom up because I've not been doing this very long. I'm just starting. And he's giving me a lot of his energy, and he's loving it, and he loves hearing what you have to say.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, David. And what is your website?
It's universalconversations.com. And my books are on Amazon.com and Barnes & Noble. They're in softcover and in different e-readers. So, and I have a website, universalconversations.com that I mentioned. So there's a lot of information.
Pictures. I encourage everybody to go look at pictures.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a picture of your Victorian home with tons of orbs. That's amazing.
Look at the orbs, yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell us about that picture?
Yes, every picture I would take, there would be hundreds of them, and sometimes some faces and so on there. So, yeah, I invite people to go into universalconversations.com because there are many more pictures. Even my dad, after he passed away, is on there. I got a good one of him.
Where can I find your dad?
There's pictures on my website, the Universal Conversation.
Here it is.
There he is. I see him.
Looks like he's got gloves on or something, or what is that?
It's the shoulders down. It's his back, but you can see his elbow and his fingers and so on, and he's in his bright gold light. And my little granddaughter's opening her Christmas present, so I took a picture and came out.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's a wrap, and thank you so much for joining us today, Ruth Ann, in the Sacred Rain.
Thank you.
Much love. Thank you.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
You need some more speed records in this day and age. You need coverage.
Coverage? Oh, you mean them little root weevils that crawl around popping off cameras in your face?
Those root weevils write history.
Many of
you know that quote by Jack Nicholson and A Few Good Men, you can't handle the truth. Well, you can, and Event Horizons will give you those truths. So when you're mad as hell and not going to take it anymore from that memorable senior network, you'll know just what to do. We will draw you in and become your news addiction at Event Horizons. Join us Monday through